Chris here, and in this review I am now taking an in-depth look at the new Xiaomi Note 10 Lite. Now this particular model is quite a bit different to the Mi 10 Lite I just reviewed. It has a 64 megapixel main camera. It also does have a full HD AMOLED panel in it with in-screen fingerprint reader, but there is a difference in terms of chipset and, as a result, performance. Now it starts the base model with 6 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage. Now there is a bit of confusion I can see from the comments on which model you should actually buy. So in this review of the Mi Note 10 Lite here, I also will do a little bit of comparison, and at the end I'll let you know, after using both of these phones extensively, on which one I feel is best at what. So in our box you get a user guide, a warranty card, a Type-C to USB cable, and our charger. So this charger is 30 watts maximum the charge rate. It will take just over an hour. The exact time I will give you later on in this video. And then we do have a TPU case as well. It's a high quality case. It's slightly transparent and it does fit this phone perfectly. So let's take a look at the weight of this one and the build quality. So it's 208 grams here. So heavier, yes, than the Mi 10 Lite. It also is thicker. This one is 9.6 millimeters. But it does have an excellent build. We have a frame around the outside that is metal. So no plastic frame with this one. Metal volume up and down buttons as well. I do like the location of them, so I can easily get to that one with my thumb. And the location of the fingerprint reader, you can see where it is very handy, and I've noticed that it does work quite well. Not quite as fast as the Mi 10 Lite, however. It's probably aided by the fact that that particular model does have a faster processor, probably making it a little bit quicker there. So down the bottom we do have some antenna lines. We've got a Type-C port that does not support video out. It's USB 2 spec, 3.5mm headphone jack with excellent quality, microphone, and single downward firing loudspeaker with this. Then up the top we have an IR transmitter and a secondary microphone used for calls and in video for stereo audio. And then on the left, well, there's no buttons there at all, just an antenna line that you can see. Really good build quality to this one. So it is a step up over the Mi 10 Lite, definitely, because not just because it's metal, but the finish of it as well. It just seems almost more like a flagship build that we have with this. So the front-facing camera, this is 16 megapixels. We don't have a status LED in the earpiece with this one, unfortunately. And then the bezels, okay, so top and bottom, they are a little bit slimmer than the Mi 10 Lite. Curvature of the screen makes the side bezels look a lot slimmer, even though they're actually probably about the same. And then, of course, the cameras on the rear. The main camera is probably the main reason you would get this particular model over the Mi 10 Lite, because it is a 64 megapixel Sony IMX686 as used in flagship phones from Xiaomi like the Poco F2 Pro. It does take an excellent photo, as you'll see later on in the samples. And we do have an 8 megapixel ultrawide, 2 megapixel camera for macros, and a 5 megapixel camera for our depth information, and some dual tone LED flashes there. Now, I'm someone that does love to have very good displays in all the tech I use, and this is not a bad display at all. It's a good one from Xiaomi that we've got. So this one is 6.47 inches. It is full HD plus the resolution, and it's AMOLED. Maximum brightness does top out to be about 615 to 620 nits of brightness. This is measuring just white, by the way. So we do have our anti-flicker DC dimming. Now watch what happens on camera when I turn this off. You can see it flickers. Bear in mind, this is just on camera, this is going to happen. And at lower brightness settings, if you keep this on, I don't detect any flicker. Normally, my eyes at least, I don't see the flicker that some others could. Dark mode, of course, is there, and you can schedule that. This is pretty much standard. Very deep blacks, of course, being an AMOLED panel. And what about the edge detection? I find that triggering gestures is good. It's always nice to have the curved edge for our gestures, okay? But I personally prefer a flat AMOLED screen because you don't get this color shifting. You can see on this outer right edge, see how it's a little bit bluish or gray in tint? And that is normal because of that edge, that curvature we have to the glass. Now this is covered with Gorilla Glass 5 here as well, which is great. Under color scheme, we've got options there for our auto mode, and you've got saturation as well. But what is missing is we do not have with this one yet a sunlight mode, but with that 620 nits of brightness, it is still legible in direct sunlight.
The gamma checks out to be okay. It's not bad here. And real-world images do look good. So all up, this is a nice screen, and I do believe most people will be very happy with it. But is it as good as the Mi 10 Lite screen? No, I prefer that screen. I think it's marginally better than this one. So in general, for most people, this phone does have performance. I think that it's adequate. Now, if you're into your games, you want the best performance, I would say go for the Mi 10 Lite, definitely. As you'll see, now looking just at a few benchmarks. So this is the last patch that came through just before I started to film this. And all it's done really is just add our security patch level now to April. That was March before when I first got it. It's now April. And those patches will keep coming through, of course, from Xiaomi. They're pretty good with fixing things, and they definitely need to, of course, have a few updates to come through with the things that I've pointed out in this video. So a charge time here of 1 hour and 10 minutes to fully charge the battery isn't actually too bad. It's at 30 watts. It's not the quickest I have seen, but overall that is very decent for the 5,260 milliamp hour capacity. And battery time here, so this one is slightly disappointing. Don't get me wrong here, 15 hours at a fixed battery life benchmark at 200 nits of brightness is a good score. This means 2 days for most people this phone will run for. But I got almost 16 hours, close to 16 hours with the Mi 10 Lite, and it has a smaller battery capacity. I think it's down to the screens. I think this AMOLED just isn't quite as efficient as the one that is in the Mi 10 Lite there. So if you want the best battery life, Mi 10 Lite is definitely the way to go. Now GPS, very good signal strength here, okay, you get a very good average in the 35s, all good. Walking around town in my car, it will follow me, it doesn't lag behind or skip and just jump all over the place. No problems with that, very good GPS. So wireless speeds are not as good, again, as the better spec'd Snapdragon 765G system on a chip. That one's wireless is actually a lot better than this. So the minimum speed here, this is my point I always measure at, which is downstairs, quite a way away from my wireless router, It's on 5 gigahertz band, and that's wireless AC. And I have noticed that it should actually, for me, be at least over 100 megabits per second. So lagging behind there a little. Maximum wireless throughput is 272 megabits per second. Now on 4G, I'm noticing decent speeds. I'm getting up to 20, 25 megabits per second, dependent on, of course, your carrier there. It does have LTE Band 20 and also LTE Band 28 as well. So all the European bands are all covered for your 4G. This is the Antutu version 8 score. This is a fine score for what it is for this chipset, okay? So the Snapdragon 730G is still very decent in terms of scores there. For these synthetic benchmarks. So this is Geekbench 5 now as well. Just use this for reference. Check it out with your current phone if you want to see if this is an increase of performance or the other way around. Internal storage, so this one it's still fine. This is definitely not going to be causing any bottlenecks. Good random reads and writes. Sequential read is about half of what you get with the UFS 2.1 spec drive we've got in the Mi 10 Lite. And we do have Camera 2 API Level 3 support. So if you're into using Google Camera, that's Gcam ports, they're going to work on this one. No issues. And Widevine Level 1 cert. So this means Netflix, Amazon Prime Video should all be in full HD. Now I know Netflix is working well. And then you get about 109 gigabytes free with this one. And there we go. Well, that's just the firmware version I had to start with. And we do get this. We get a little bit of bloatware that's pre-installed. All manufacturers are doing this, and I don't personally like to see this, and then putting these apps on, but it's very easy to remove them. You can uninstall them. I uninstalled about 1.2 gigabytes worth of bloatware, and you get some Amazon and other ones in here. So we'll jump now into our ROM performance. So I have noticed that it is pretty good. Most of the time it is fast, and if I trigger those recent apps there, you will sometimes notice a little bit of lag with the animations, just now and then. Now if we go back into applications, that Task Manager can sometimes kill things off pretty quick. It depends. But I've got the 6 gigabytes of RAM here and 128 gigabytes of storage. And triggering those gestures, as I mentioned with the screen, is quite good. The screen sensitivity, the touch response is great. And what about palm rejection? Also good. Now haptics with the keyboard, I have noticed, is pretty good. It's not the best I have felt. It's not as good as, say, the K30 Pro or the Poco F2 Pro haptic engine. And that's understandable because that's a flagship, and this one definitely is not. So I have noticed that there is actually this random bug that I'm just going to show you right now that I managed to, probably the first time ever, capture a bug when recording. Is it now and then when I do something very demanding and I just go into the phone, or I've had it locked and it's been in a deep sleep state, and then I go to unlock it, this will happen that for a few seconds, sometimes it's normally just a split second, there'll be no icons showing at all with MIUI 11, and then everything flashes back. And that's just the one thing I have noticed, and as mentioned, just the occasional little bit of lag now and then. Now, side by side, definitely when you put it along here with the Mi 10 Lite that I just recently reviewed in the channel, I have noticed that this one, of course, does feel quite a bit smoother. This is the Snapdragon 765G versus the 730G, and that's understandable that we do have that performance gap. Is it a huge gap? A lot of people probably won't even notice it, but of course, if you're into your games and you want the best performance out of these two models, then that one is the one to go for. So I often comment on the 3.5mm output of Xiaomi's phones, and it's no exception here that it is very good. I'm glad to see they still have, at least in their mid-range and budget phones, the 3.5mm headphone jack, and they're still focused on delivering very good audio output from those analog jacks. Bluetooth audio is good, voice call quality, no problems. I have tested it out and it sounds just fine to me. I haven't had any issues with the earpiece or funny, strange noises. It does have active noise cancellation as well. So here is a sample from the single downwards firing loudspeaker right here. Ideally, I would have liked to have seen also in the earpiece a secondary loudspeaker just to back it up, but it doesn't actually sound bad. It's got good volume, decent mids, and even a little bit of bass to it, as you hear from this sample. Now onto our gaming performance. So it really depends on the title you're testing out. Easier games on the GPU and this particular CPU here, like Mobile Legends, will run at a very nice frame rate on even the high settings, and it does look great. But if you then step it up to a more demanding game, like Call of Duty for example, this one I recommend running on low. Now on the low setting, max frame rate option, it will run at a steady 60 frames per second, and this is excellent. But as soon as you step it up to say high, or even medium, you will then see some frame dips, which is to be expected from this chipset. And an even more demanding game, which is Shadowgun Legends, which is possibly also poorly optimized. This one I recommend to run on low. If you run it on medium, you will see the frame rate dip down to below 30 frames per second. So it's all down to what game you're testing out. As for thermals, very good with this particular phone, that even after playing for 1 hour, it is really barely getting warm on the back and the front of the screen, which is great to see. Now over to our cameras. So this is the main 64 megapixel camera, and tapping this over here takes us over to the 8 megapixel ultra wide now. And then if we tap up the top here, that is 2x digital zoom. And then 64 megapixel mode, portrait mode, night mode, and we have a pro mode as well. So the shutter rate can go all the way up to 30 seconds, ISO up to 6400. You can select the lens you want to use, but we don't have a Pro Video mode or a RAW option. So with the front-facing video, we don't have any electronic image stabilization, and it is just 1080p maximum. Now the 1080p quality is good. It's just I really wish it had electronic image stabilization, so this footage was just a little smoother and more usable. Now of course, if we did have the EIS, it would be cropped in about here, and I'm holding it out. That's full arm's length right now, so we fit quite a bit in the shot too with this one, which is one positive. And you see as I walk up the stairs that it is going to shake around quite a bit here as a result. Video on the main camera, so 4K 30 frames per second maximum. Very good electronic image stabilization. They have really improved here with their electronic image stabilization, Xiaomi. And I'm just going to jog down these steps. You can see that really is quite smooth. Now if you pan around just a little too fast, you can sometimes get a little bit of judder. So I don't recommend doing that, just keep it slow. You can also shoot video with the ultrawide, but it's 1080p max with this one, and the quality doesn't look quite as good, but we do have that really good electronic image stabilization. Now once you start shooting, you're unable to swap over to the main camera or back to the ultrawide.
Alright guys, so it really boils down to two main areas, and that is cameras and performance. So if you want the best camera for the main camera, you go with this one, the Note 10 Lite that is, and the better build quality as well. Now the better performance screen wireless is this one. So the Mi 10 Lite is probably the one to go for most people. That's the one I do actually recommend over these two, unless of course you really must have that better main camera sensor, the 64 megapixel one. Now there is optimization that's needed a little bit with the cameras. They're not quite perfect, and the ROM performance as well is faster and better on this one due to the faster chip, gaming as well. However, the gaming on this, okay, gaming performance, if you keep it on the low settings in the demanding games, and even the high settings on the less demanding games, is very good. You can get a solid 60 frames per second. But if you put it onto medium or high with some of those newer titles which are really demanding, you will see a little bit of slowdown there, and you will see the occasional frame dip. That's why I say keep it on low. Now UI performance with that little bug I'm seeing too popping up, it's actually on the last couple of Xiaomi phones that I have looked at, and I'm sure they're going to get onto this ASAP just to fix that little glitch where all the icons disappear for normally just a split second, and they come back again, and the occasional little lag here and there too that I am seeing. I'm sure they're aware too, and it will be addressed, but it's, you know, not exactly wonderful to see this in the phone. I hope the team's not overloaded with so many releases of mobile phones from Xiaomi. So, fast charging, great battery life as well, 2-day phone for most people, but it's a little surprising to see that it didn't actually better the Mi 10 Lite. So the Mi 10 Lite has a smaller battery capacity. That's 4,100 and 100, isn't it? Versus the 5,260. You would expect this one to get more in terms of runtime, but it doesn't. I think it's down to the AMOLED panels being just a little bit less efficient on this model here. Overall, it is a very solid offering from Xiaomi, and both of these phones you really can't go wrong. So thank you so much for watching this in-depth, long I know, but detailed review, and I hope I did answer all of your questions. Please check my review of the Mi 10 Lite here if you're also interested in that model that is. And do like if you liked the video, and subscribe for more up and coming videos. And I'll see you in the next one.